Hey everyone, this is Mukesh Otwani from learn-automation.com. Guys, in this lecture, we are mainly going to talk about two interesting variables called local variable and global variable. So I will not call this as a global variable, better we will call this an instance variable because Java says there's no concept of global variable, it is always instance variable. Okay, so we'll talk about this in detail now. So before we start, let's talk about the high level agenda. We'll talk about what is local variable, what is instance variable, the default values that we have set by default for local instance variable, and at last when to use what. Okay, so now what is local variable? As the name says, local, right? It means they will be available within a particular method or a constructor or a block. Okay, so that variable have the very limited scope. That variables will be within a method, constructor or block. So I will show you with the help of proper example and code what do I mean by local variable. They are created once method, constructor or block is invoked. It means the moment you call these methods, constructor, or when you call that particular piece of block, these variables will be used or they will get created. Okay, so I will show you again. So what do I mean by method, constructor and blocks? We'll talk about one by one. And the very important point about the local variable is that it is mandatory to initialize the local variable before using, otherwise you will not be able to compile your code. It means you cannot keep like without initializing the local variable, you have to initialize it. Okay, otherwise you will get the error. So let me show you everything one by one, then I will move back to instance variable. So this is what we have discussed in the previous videos. Let me close everything and let me create a fresh package called variables demo. Okay, and let me create a fresh class. In this class I will give local variable demo public static void main. Let me keep this as V capital. So this is what the method we have right now. This is public static void main, the main entry. And let me create, okay, let's do it here itself. If I say int x equal to nothing, okay, just I'm doing the declaration part. The moment I start using it, you can see it is giving me one error. This is actually a compiled error. It says the local variable x may not have been initialized. It means you cannot initialize or you cannot use this without initializing. The moment you click on initialize variable, it will assign some value and then you can use it. So the first point, local variable do not have any default values, but the moment you start using instance variable, they will have the default values. Okay, so that was the first point. It is mandatory to initialize them before using them. If you don't use or if you don't initialize, you'll start getting compile time error. Now let's create one method here, public void show, or I will say, let's say marks, and let's take one more variable called show. So if I take one variable called int marks equal to 90, and if I say marks are plus, I cannot use this marks here. The moment I try to use it, Java will not be able to understand what is this marks, because this particular variable which is marks, it is have the scope within this method. So once you go outside this method, you cannot access this. Similarly, x also is limited till this public static void main. You cannot use it outside this method. So the point here is you cannot access the local variable outside the method, constructor or the block. Okay, so if you want to access this, make sure you put this into instance variable, then only you can use it. Okay, so next, for example, if I create one more variable called, let's say final, or let's keep it result. Okay, so if I try to access this result, I can access, because now this is instance variable that I will be using in multiple methods. So I will be talking about instance variable in detail, but just keep this point in mind that instance or local variable have the validity only till the method. Once you go outside the method, you cannot access them. Now let's talk about example. This example we have anyway seen. Okay, so scope is only till this method. Now the second example is with the block. Now this is very famous example and very frequently you will be getting this. Okay, so let's create one method. I'm not creating separate class, better I will use the same method, and I will say print names. And here if I write a small for loop, let's say if I say I is less than equal to, let's say 5 and I plus plus, and I want to just, let's say, print this. The moment I try to access this I will say I value is plus, and if I just give this I cannot access, even though within I am in the same method, but this particular local variable have the scope within the block. Okay, this is actually a for loop, so this is actually a loop statement. So once you come out of this for loop, you cannot access this I variable. This is another very interesting point. Keep this in mind. Same goes with the constructor. Constructor has the exactly same thing that we discussed just now. Okay, so first is method, constructor, and the block. Now let's talk about instance variable. That is my favorite topic and very interesting concept. For that, let me take one more example, and let me remove this. Anyways, this is not needed now. Yes, so let me just go back. I will copy this program and I will paste it, and this time I will say instance variable. Now first of all, what do I mean by instance variable? So first of all, people create, or people have confusion then what is local variable and global variable. So first of all, there's no global variable in Java. They actually call this as an instance variable. So for this, I have taken their official documentation. If you go back to docs.oracle.com, Java says there are basically 4 type of variables. Okay, one is instance variable, which is non-static field that I'm going to discuss right now. Local variable just now we discussed, and parameters we have discussed in our previous video. The next one would be static one, that I will be covering the separate separate video, because this is really very important. For the time being, I'm taking local and instance variable, which is non-static field. Okay, so no global variable. You can call this as a global variable just to make it little simpler, but officially it's an instance variable. Now if you talk about what exactly they are the variable which are declared within the class but outside the method, block, and the constructor. They do not have only scope till the method, constructor, and block. They are at the class level. But class level variables are totally different. These are non-static variables declared in the class but outside the method. And if you see a class variable, there's a dedicated category which is nothing but static fields. That do not get confused with instance variable with static variables or class variable. And there's a very interesting point about them is, if you don't provide any values, Java will assign the default values for them. Okay, which was not the case with local variable. Local variable, it is mandatory to provide the value, right? But here it is not. So why do we call this as instance variable? First of all, so the moment you create instance variable, okay, their values will be unique for each instance of the class. So what does it mean? Let me create a program. I will be creating 3 to 4 instances, and you will see for each instances we will be having different variables, different copy actually. Okay, just give me a couple of minutes. I will be showing you with the help of one example. And these are the data types and their default values for instance variable. For int it is 0, for boolean it is false, for byte, short, long, all are 0. Only the last one, float and double, they have 0.0 and 0.0. These are their default values. Okay, so if you talk about this example, if I take 2 variables, they are actually within the class but they're outside the method, they will be called as a instance variable. Let me create a program. So I will remove everything. I will just remove them one by one. So let's take one example. In this example, let's say I will be taking that int, I will say customer ID, let's say 90 or let's say 10, and let's take I will say marks, and let's keep it actually a roll number and marks just to keep it little easier. I have two variables and let me make it double so that we can also get marks in double, let's say 80.5. Now if I create a method, let's say public void show, and I will use them, so I will say roll number, whatever roll number we have, so I will directly use this roll here, okay, plus I will give one space, then again I will say and marks are, and I will be using this marks variable. Okay, now one interesting point, if I remove them you will get their default values, which I will show you. But let me create one object here. Since this is a non-static method, guys, we need to create object of this class, then only you can access them. So if you have not referred my previous videos where we discussed about the class methods, how to call the methods, if they're non-static, we need to call them with the help of object. So how do we create object? First of all, class name space object name equal to new and class name parenthesis and semicolon. Now this object got created. Now with the help of this object I can call this show method, and the moment I run this code you can see I got this value. Now what if I create multiple object? Let's say I created obj2, obj2 here, obj3, obj3 here. So what happens when you have multiple object, for each instance I would say you will have their copy. Okay, let me show you through paint so that you will have clear understanding. The moment you create this object, okay, object 1, object 2 and object 3, so what are the variables we have? Roll number and marks, right? So I will say roll number and marks. This is for object 1, this is for object 2 and this is for object 3. And let me give this obj1, this is obj2 and this is obj3. For each instance you will get their copies. Even if I create 10 object or 10 instances, 10 times you will get their copies. So in order to show this, what I will do, I will run them in a debug mode. So right click, debug as Java application. So you can see this is obj1, okay, and this obj1 have their own copy. I will call the show method. Now this obj2 again, they also have their own copy. And if I create one more, if I just create one more object, and if I see this object also have its own copy because they belongs to a class, okay, they belongs to an instance. So if you create 10 instances, 10 copies will be created for them. This is totally different when you go with the static variables that we will discuss in upcoming videos. But as of now, if they're non-static, each time when you create object, their copies will be reserved. Clear? Now another interesting point, if you notice here, each object have the same value because we are not changing, right? They all are same for each object. What if I want to change them? So in order to show you this part, I hope you're able to connect with me, and in case if you find any issue, let me know. But I'm sure after this example you will not have any question. Now let me create a constructor. Okay, so this constructor, as we know, constructor has the same name as class name, so better I will create this or change this name to So I changed the class name just to make it little readable, and let me create one constructor. So guys, as you already know, constructor has the same name as class name and it does not have any return type, not even void. So these I will remove it from here. I don't want to put their values, and I want to assign these values at the time of object creation. So I will be passing these two values while creating objects so that I can show you that each object will have different copies. This is just for you. So if I create, since we are getting two class variable, right, or sorry, two instance variable, let's say one is roll number and one is marks, and let me assign this. So I will say this dot roll equal to roll number and this dot marks equal to marks. Clear? So whatever values I will be passing directly from here, it will be assigned to these particular instance variable. Now let me just pass roll number 1, and this is actually, guys, double. Let me take this as a double marks. So this, let's say 80.5, this I will give 2.90.5, and this I will give 3.95.5. So while calling this 3 times, this constructor will be invoked, right? And each instance variable have the different values. Now again, debug as Java application. Okay, wait, let me add a debug point here. Line number 16. So now we are at the first statement. Let me execute this. This obj1 have marks, right? Now second one. The moment I create second object, this has a different value. And the last one, this object also have a different value. Why? Because these are instance variable. For each instance you will get their copies. And just because of this minus statement, it was giving a different output. Now let me debug it once again. So debug as Java application. So let it runs once again, yeah, and we got this. I hope it is clear now. For each instance you will get a different copy. That's why we call them as an instance variable. Now let me create one local variable here. So int x equal to 90, let's say some random value I'm giving. Okay, so it should print this, but I cannot access this x variable outside this method. But there is a small twist. If I take one instance variable with the same name, okay, this is also int x, this is also int x, and let's say 0. If I want to print this, let's say this is 100. So the moment you run this, what do you think, which will take the higher preferences? Because here I am giving 0, here it is giving x. So it is actually not creating any issue because this is local variable, this is global variable. But the moment I say x, will it take 0 or will it take 100? Let's run it, you will get to know. You can see it is taking 0, 0, 0. So the point here is, the moment you have same variable, okay, instance variable and local variable, higher preference given to local variable. Okay, so always try to use local variable if it is not getting shared. If you have certain variables which you want to access throughout the different methods, go ahead with the instance variable. A very classical example here in Selenium. In case if you're not familiar with Selenium, that's fine, but once you move forward you will understand this easily. Let's say if I have multiple test engine test and I want to use this one WebDriver variable or WebDriver reference variable. In that case, definitely I need this as a instance variable, so that I can use at multiple tests. For example, let me remove everything. I will say public void test1. This is, let's say, test2, and let's say this is test3. In each and every test I will be needing, or I need this. So let's say I just want this in each and every class, sorry, or each and every method. So definitely I have to use this as a instance variable. I'm just giving some dummy statement, guys. Okay, so definitely in all these methods I need this driver, so it is mandatory to use this as an instance variable. Keep it out at the class level, and if there's some variables that you don't need in the next method, keep it as a local variable. I hope this will make sense now. What is the difference between local variable versus instance variable? Instance variable will be within the class but outside the method. Local variables are within the method, constructor, and the blocks. And now the last point before I end this session, and now this will bring the curiosity about the static keyword, because few concepts will change when you go from non-static to static. So if I take a new demo, and let me take one integer, let's say C. Okay, so ideally if I try to access this C in a variable, in a separate method, let's say show, I can directly use it, right? I can give C, and whatever value is assigned to C, it will be printed here. In our case right now, it is, we have not given, so it will take the default value, it will be 0 here. Okay, so let me access the same C variable within the static method, and you will see a difference now. You can see now Java is giving me error. So what is the difference now? See guys, here it was non-static variable and we were accessing with it non-static method. It was working absolutely fine. But now the scenario is different. Now we are trying to access non-static variable within the static method. Okay, then it's not allowed. Why? Because C is an instance variable. In order to access this instance variable, you need an instance. Right now you don't have any instance. So how do you create instance? As we know, we need to create object, then we can access. So if I say new demo a equal to new demo I got this a, which is nothing but object, but in simple term let's say instance. If I say a.c, now I can access. Okay, so there's a complete theory behind static variable versus non-static variable, static method versus non-static method. So that I will discuss in a separate video, because that deserves a dedicated video. So I will be posting that soon. So now you got the point, right? Why we were not able to access C? Because C was instance variable. In order to access instance variable, you need instance. So we created instance and we started using it. Hope you like this video. If yes, then share with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and if you have any other question related to Java or Selenium, let me know in the comment section, or you can send me email, which is mukeshotwani@learn-automation.com. Thank you so much guys. Have a nice day. Bye bye.